One thing has always fascinated me. The people I've seen stay stuck the longest aren't usually the least capable. They are often the smartest. The people who read the most books, who love learning, who ask thoughtful questions, who understand complicated ideas, who always seem to know one more thing. And yet, they often struggle to take the next simple step. Why? That question stayed with me for years until one day I realized I was describing myself. 2 weeks. That's how long it took me to do something I had been avoiding for 4 years. 4 years, then 2 weeks. When I looked back, I kept asking myself the same question. What changed? Did I suddenly become smart? No. Did my English suddenly become fluent? No. Did I discover a better strategy? No. Almost nothing changed on this outside, but something changed inside. And once that changed, everything else started moving. For a long time, I thought that one more book, one more course, one more improvement in my English would finally make the difference. But that day never came. I always had a good reason for waiting, a reasonable reason, a logical reason. If someone had asked me why I wasn't starting, I would have had an answer immediately. And that's exactly why I stayed stuck for so long. It wasn't the thing that finally moved me forward. Something much deeper was happening. And that's what I'd like to explore with you today. Most intelligent people don't think they're avoiding action. They think they're still preparing. They are reading another book, taking another course, listening to another podcast, thinking a little longer, improving one more skill, waiting until they feel ready. From the outside, it looks responsible. It even looks productive, but sometimes preparation becomes the perfect hiding place. Because as long as preparing, we never have to discover what reality would actually look like. And that's what happened to me. For years, I was waiting for the right condition, but I wasn't. I was protecting something. I just didn't know what it was yet. That's when I stopped asking a different question. Not what else do I need to learn, but what am I actually protecting? Around that time, I came across an idea that completely changed the way I looked at myself. In psychology, it's known as self-verification theory. The idea is surprisingly simple. We usually think people are always trying to become happier, more successful, more confident. But according to this theory, that's not always what we are protecting. Very often, we are protecting the version of ourselves we already know, even if that version keeps us stuck. Think about it. If you've seen yourself as shy one for 20 years, or the responsible one, or the person who always puts everyone else first, those identities become familiar. And what's familiar often feels safer than what's new. When I read that, something suddenly made sense. Maybe I wasn't protecting my comfort. Maybe I was protecting my identity. That changed the kinds of questions I started asking. And it also changed what I started paying attention to. One thing surprised me. Intelligent people often ignore their emotions. They trust logic, they trust thinking, and they treat emotions as something to push aside, almost like a distraction. But I started seeing emotions very differently, not as a weakness, as information, like a dashboard in a car or a traffic light, but they tell us that something important is happening inside. And if we become curious instead of pushing those feelings, they often lead us straight to the inner conflict we've been missing. I started wondering something. What if thoughts aren't actually the beginning? What if something else comes first? That question stayed with me for a long time. If thoughts aren't the beginning, then what is? Over the years, I started noticing the same pattern and again, not only in other people, in myself too. Everything seemed to begin with something much earlier than a thought. It began with an inner image. Let me show you what I mean. If I ask 10 people to imagine a dog, everyone will imagine one, but not the same dog. One person sees the dog they grew up with. Another remembers the dog that frightened them as a child. Someone else sees a golden retriever. The word is exactly the same, but the picture inside is completely different. And I think that's how our minds work, not only with dogs, with almost everything: home, freedom, change, love, even one simple word, I. The word stays the same, but the image inside each of us is different. And that image doesn't appear by accident. Over the years, I noticed that our inner images are usually shaped by two things. First, strong emotion, and second, tradition. Sometimes one powerful emotional experience is enough. Sometimes it's hundreds of small moments, the same message, the same reaction, the same feeling, repeated again and again until eventually the image starts feeling like reality. After a while, we stop questioning it. We don't even notice it. It's an image anymore. We simply think, this is who I am, or this is just how life works. Around the same time, I became interested in the work of neuroscientist Joseph. He spent many years studying how fear works in the brain. One finding especially stayed with me. His research showed that our emotional brain can begin reacting before the conscious mind has finished making sense of what's happening. In other words, something inside us can respond first, and only afterwards does the thinking mind begin explaining the experience. That made me wonder, what if this is happening much more often than we realize? What if our thoughts aren't leading the process but trying to explain a process that has already begun? Eventually, everything I had been observing came together in one very simple model. First comes a subconscious image. The image creates an emotion. The emotion shapes our thoughts. The thoughts influence our actions, and our actions create our results. Subconscious image, emotion, thoughts, action, results. Once I saw that sequence, I stopped trying to change my thoughts first or my actions first. Instead, I became curious about the image that had created them. Because if the image changes, everything that follows can begin to change as well. But a model is only an idea until you recognized it in your own life. So the first place I tested this model was my own life. For years, I believed I knew exactly why I wasn't moving. I thought the problem was my English, or my schedule, or the fact that we had just moved to a new country, or that I already had a business, or simply that I had 4 children. Every explanation sounded completely reasonable, and that's what made them so convincing. My days were full. There was always another school event, another dinner to make, another conversation that couldn't wait. By the end of the day, I honestly felt like I had done a lot, just never the one thing that mattered most. So I kept telling myself I simply don't have time. And I believed it until something unexpected happened. If none of that changed, why did my actions change? That question became impossible to ignore. Instead of asking, what else do I need to fix? I asked a completely different question. What image appears when I think about myself? Just me. I closed my eyes and I waited. What appeared wasn't confidence. It wasn't excitement. It wasn't possibility. It was almost the opposite. There was no clear picture of who I could become in this new life, only emptiness. That was the moment everything starting making sense. For years, I had been trying to change my actions without ever looking at the image that had been creating them. And once that image started changing, something surprising happened. I didn't suddenly find more time. I stopped giving my time away. Every afternoon, I protected several hours for this project. Not because someone gave me more hours, because I finally stopped treating my own work as the least important thing on my calendar. Ironically, my family didn't lose me. Our life became calmer. My husband and I stopped trying to squeeze time together between interruptions. Instead, we started protecting one evening every week just for us. The time became shorter, but it became real. And that was the first moment I realized changing the image changes much more than one action. It changes the way you organize your entire life. For a long time, I thought I was afraid of failing. But eventually, I realized that wasn't true. The real fear was becoming someone I didn't know. When I closed my eyes and looked at my image of me, I saw someone very familiar, a woman who understood the people around her. That image felt safe. Then I imagined the person who a new project and stranger. That person didn't feel like me. She felt unfamiliar, almost like a stranger. That's when something became painfully clear. I was protecting my identity because if the old version of me would have to disappear, and even thought that was exactly what I said I wanted, another part of me experienced it as a loss. I think this is something we rarely talk about. We assume people are afraid of failure, but sometimes we are afraid of becoming something new, someone new. Not because the new version is worse, but because it's unknown. The familiar version of ourselves may limit us, but at least we know who that person is. The future version has no certainty, no proof. When I finally saw that, I stopped trying to force myself. Instead, I started working with that image very gently, very honestly. I wasn't trying to become someone else. I was allowing my idea of myself to grow. And something unexpected happened. Recording a video no longer felt like losing myself. It felt like meeting a larger version of myself. That was the real turning point. Not because I suddenly found more motivation or time, but because the action no longer threatened who I believed I was. 2 weeks later, I had recorded more videos than I had made in the previous 4 years. Nothing outside had changed, but everything inside had. So I'd like to leave you with one simple experiment. Close your eyes, take one slow breath, and quietly say one word like that. Me. Don't try to think. Don't analyze. Don't look for the right answer. Just notice what appears. Do you see an image? Or maybe you don't see anything at all? Do you feel warmth, distance, pressure, curiosity, emptiness? Whatever appears, don't judge it, please. Just notice it, because that image may have been quietly shaping your life for years. Not your thoughts, not your plans, not even your decisions. The image that comes before all of them. And maybe that's why so many intelligent people stay stuck. Not because they aren't smart enough, but because intelligence is incredibly good at explaining the pattern instead of questioning it. The smarter we are, the easier it becomes to build a beautiful explanation. I need more time. I need more knowledge. I need better strategy. I'm just not ready yet. Sometimes those explanations are true, but very often they are simply protecting an old image of who we believe we are. Maybe intelligence isn't the thing that's keeping us stuck. Maybe it's the story inside us, the part of us that can explain almost anything, including why today isn't the day to begin. So before you ask yourself, what should I do next? Try asking a different question. What image appears when I simply say me? Because if that image begins to change. This is the beginning of the research I'm inviting you into. Not research about psychology, research about yourself. Thank you for exploring these questions with me. See you in the next video.